This is the Red Reef Trail in the Red Cliffs Conservation Area. That's just about 25 minutes north of St. George, only a 2-mile round trip to this beautiful waterfall. The biggest downside to this trail is that the waterfall is very seasonal and dependent on recent rains. Despite this, it's still a beautiful walk along Quail Creek, and you have the opportunity to see petroglyphs and even dinosaur tracks just north of the parking lot. Emerald Pools in Zion National Park is another hike whose true beauty is dependent on recent weather or snow melt. In the right conditions, the trail offers 2 beautiful waterfalls along the 3-mile loop. Despite the amount of water in the falls, this hike still offers beautiful views of Zion Canyon. The petroglyphs in Snow Canyon are a true hidden gem in the park and actually don't even show up on the official park map. We opted to park off Highway 18 in Bushwhack to meet up with the Gila Trail to get to the Slot Canyon. Entering the Slot Canyon is like something out of Indiana Jones, and you come to these beautiful rock engravings that are very different than a lot of the petroglyphs that we've seen previously. And just in case you want to see my little dude run through the Slot Canyon again, here we go. This is the first off-trail hike on my list, and off-trail hikes are definitely my favorite. Progeny Peak is a good introductory to off-trail navigation. The hike is only 2.5-mile round trip, and it's definitely more on the moderate side when it comes to off-trail peaks like this, but the knee-deep snow that we dealt with near the top definitely made this more of a tougher climb. Nonetheless, it was well worth it, as you had beautiful views of the backcountry of Zion. The Cinder Cone Trail in Snow Canyon State Park takes you to the top of an old volcano. It's only about 2-mile round trip, but you have beautiful views at the top, especially going the back way into the Pine Valley Mountains and then overlooking Snow Canyon State Park itself. We lucked out with an unbelievable sunset and stayed up there until it was almost dark and then made our way back down. The 360 views at the top would make this a good choice for sunset or sunrise. Angel's Landing is a classic hike in the park, and while the views are awesome, I definitely enjoy the solitude that you get on the backcountry hikes. However, on this day, because of the amount of snow, we had a ton of solitude at the top, which made this very special. The rest of my family made it to Scout Overlook and waited for me, and the use of crampons definitely made this much safer and easier to ascend up and descend. On my way back down, there were a few dinguses trying to come up in tennis shoes, so I definitely do not recommend being one of those people. The experience I had on this day with all the snow versus doing this in the summer of 2019 was completely different. Back in 2019, there was a Congo line going up to the top, so that definitely takes away from the experience a little bit, and I will say that the permit system lessens the crowds, and the snow and ice lessens them even more. The Narrows is another extremely popular hike that we had a bunch of solitude on, mainly because we did this in the winter, and such conditions, in my opinion, is worth it to walk through this canyon without seeing hardly anybody else. The amount of snow melt added to the experience with all the seasonal waterfalls everywhere and really made it magnificent walking through. However, the main upside of doing this in the summer is, as you can see, you get to swim wherever you want to, so that's definitely a plus. It's pretty incredible to have something as beautiful as Snow Canyon State Park literally right in your backyard, as it's just a couple minute drive from St. George. The lava tubes are definitely a highlight, but I recommend looping this with whatever other trails you would like the Petrified Sand Dunes or the Butterfly Trail, and make a much longer loop and see what all the park has to offer. Snow Canyon Overlook is like the observation point of Snow Canyon State Park, mainly because the trail that you walk on, it's about 2.5 miles or so to come to the overlook. It's very boring, sandy and rocky, but your payoff at the end is just unbelievable views looking into Snow Canyon the whole way into St. George. I highly recommend doing this one for sunset, as I've had multiple beautiful sunsets going there. If you're up for a little scramble, I definitely recommend climbing up the rocks that are at the overlook itself for even better views. Two honorable mentions in Snow Canyon State Park are Scout Cave and Padre Canyon. Scout Cave is another one that's great to do at sunset. Padre Canyon was a memorable one for our family because it was the first time my 2-year-old, who was almost 3, climbed something that hard for the first time without me carrying him in my pack, so our family was pretty pumped about that. So if Snow Canyon Overlook is the observation point of Snow Canyon State Park, then I would say that Deidre Peak is the Angel's Landing of Snow Canyon State Park. The final climb up the ridge is all off trail and is some fun Class 3 scrambling with 1 or 2 Class 4 moves. The view at the top gives a very unique and seldom seen view of Snow Canyon. We clocked in at 7.5 miles and 1,500 feet of elevation gain, but almost all of that elevation gain came in the final mile up the ridge. The first time I did the Northgate Peaks Trail was for sunrise, and I needed my snowshoes because there was probably 3 to 4 feet of snow on the trail. I started in the dark and part of the road was still closed from the snow, so used my headlamp, got just to the end of the trail as the sun was rising, so I had beautiful views the whole way through into the backcountry. The amount of snow made what would have been a fairly moderate climb to the top of one of the Northgate Peaks an extremely challenging climb that took a ton of energy. I did this hike again this past year when there was no snow, and I just laughed to myself at seeing how much easier it was to get to the top. We also added on North Guardian Angel, which you can see from here, just an unbelievable 360 view. Just note that getting to the top of North Guardian Angel is a much harder climb and has some very exposed and steep areas. I'm always shocked at how few people do the Eagle Crags Trail, as it offers just stunning and unique views looking into the back part of Zion. As you can see, I enjoy my sunrise and sunset hikes, and doing for sunrise always gives you even more solitude than you'd probably already have on this trail. For those up for the challenge, it's definitely worth scrambling up after you get to the end of the official trail. Your views just keep getting better and better. To my knowledge, you can't get to the top of Eagle Crags without the use of rock climbing equipment, but just getting to their base offers you unbelievable views that very few people see. Actually getting to see Gunlock Falls requires a big winter and a little bit of luck on your timing. Fortunately for us, during this March, we were able to see Gunlock Falls in all of its glory. When it's flowing, it truly is one of the most beautiful desert waterfalls there is, and we feel very fortunate to have witnessed it. The Canyon Overlook Trail in Zion is a very popular option because the ratio of work to beautiful views is extremely high. It's only about a mile or so round trip, but you have great views looking down into the canyon. However, I recommend making a loop out of this and scrambling up what's called the East Temple Saddle. It is an absolute leg burner, but you have some very cool views that most people aren't going to see. As you descend the backside, you come to a beautiful slick rock bowl full of ponderosa pine trees. And if you get lucky, you might even see some bighorn sheep or some seasonal waterfalls in Upper Pine Creek. The Santa Clara Petroglyphs is a very easy trail just outside of town, where you get to do some exploring as some of the petroglyphs are hidden off trail, which makes them fun to find. Very kid friendly and very good to save for a rainy day, as you can see here. The next three in Zion National Park I put in a group of three. All three trails are very easy to get to. Petroglyph Pools has some great petroglyphs right off the main trail, then also a cool little slot canyon you can scramble up to. Lower Pine Creek Falls is a very easy trail, less than a mile round trip, right off the main road before you would get to the tunnel driving up Mount Carmel Highway. Many Pools is also off this road on the other side of the tunnel, and is a very easy hike, about 2 mile round trip to some really pretty cascades. All three of these trails give you much more solitude than you would see in the rest of the park, and also an opportunity to spot some bighorn sheep. Canara Falls is like a mini Narrows hike without the crowds, and although you'll need a permit, it's pretty easy to get. The trailhead is about 40 minutes north of St. George, and doing this in the summer was fun because we got to swim along the trail. The Yant Flats Trail to Candy Cliffs and Yellow Top is about a 5 mile round trip, and I highly recommend doing this hike either right before sunrise or as the sun is setting, as you can see in these pictures. The colors really pop on all the cliffs, and I promise you none of these are edited or enhanced in any way. This is really what you see as the sun is setting. Colors all around you are just gorgeous, and we had a ton of solitude, which made the experience even better. The dirt road to get to the trailhead is usually in pretty good shape, but if there's even a chance of rain, I would not go, because we almost learned the hard way as it started raining. We were on the trail before and got back to our car and barely made it off the road, so just keep that in mind. The Great Chamber, or Cutler Point as it's often called, and Peekaboo Slot Canyon are both off-road trail adventures, driving through pretty deep sand to get to. The hikes themselves are short, but you will definitely need high clearance and four-wheel drive to get to the trailheads. Water Canyon, while it's getting more popular, is definitely still considered more of a hidden gem, and the hikes to Eye of Heaven Arch and the White Domes are absolutely gorgeous. Most of this footage is actually from last year, but I did post a video of our most recent hike this past April, and we also added on the Beehive, which you can see in this clip here. Observation Point has one of the best views in the entire park from a maintained trail. My favorite way to do this trail is to take the East Mesa Trail to Observation Point, but then connect to the East Rim Trail to make a loop on the way back and end at Stave Spring Trail. This will require you to shuttle or to walk the road a little bit back to the East Mesa Trailhead, but the views and solitude along the rarely hiked East Rim Trail makes this all worth it in my opinion. Combining these two mountains from the Stave Springs Trailhead means you're going to be hiking for about 16 miles or so, but it's a very nice backcountry part of Zion, much less traveled trails, gives you stunning views of the canyon. Ironically enough, there were actually deer bones at the top of Deer Trap Mountain, which was pretty funny. Lost Peak and the Triplets are two very fun off-trail scrambles. We combined both of them for a total just over 3 mile round trip, but definitely a lot of elevation gain within those 3 miles, some leg burners, and one or two class 3 and class 4 moves just to get to the very top of the peak. Both summits offered 360 views of what I consider my favorite part of the park. Mount Kinasawa is a very challenging off-trail scramble about 4 miles to the top, but you just get absolutely stunning views of the West Temple, and you can also see up to North Guardian Peak and the North Gate Peaks, and then as you keep turning, you'll see the whole way into St. George on a clear day. A bonus treat is getting to see petroglyphs that are thousands of feet up from the main canyon. While these aren't necessarily the coolest petroglyphs I've ever seen, I would say that where they are located makes them extremely special. Crawford Arch or Bridge Mountain Arch is the most beautiful arch in Zion, and most people have not even heard of it before. You can technically see it from Springdale, but you would need binoculars or need to know where it's at and what you're looking for because it's very hard to tell from down below. Make sure to check out the full video that I did on Crawford Arch and make sure it's something that you're up for because it does require some rock climbing. Last and certainly not least is the subway in Zion. This hike requires a permit, so make sure you get that ahead of time. After a very steep descent into the canyon, you cross the water, I would say 50 or 60 times if I was counting. We did this trail after a very big winter and there was a ton of runoff as you can see, but just really unique views inside the subway with all of the icicles hanging down. Not many people get to see the subway in these conditions, especially with 4 young kids. We definitely got some weird looks when people saw us starting the hike, but we finished it. It took us, I think, 9 hours, but it's still one of the boys' favorite hikes, and they constantly talk about it. Another bonus is getting to see some dinosaur tracks off the trail as well. There are definitely more hikes that could make this list, but that's what I have for you for now, so I hope you enjoyed it. Get out there and explore St. George as it's one of my favorite parts in the whole country.